Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast live on the Chronicle NUFC Facebook page, Twitter and YouTube, and later on our podcast channel. Before we kick off, just want to put a little bit of apology in because last week's episode, some of you may have heard what sounded like a woodpecker in the episode. We have got the technical whiz kids out and we think we fixed it. So hopefully this episode will go without any wood percussion noises in the background. We do apologize and you can just enjoy all the insight into Newcastle United's transfer business or what we think is to come. So I'm Andrew Musgrove, joined by our Newcastle United editor Aaron Stokes. And as usual, Aaron, there is plenty to talk about. And we're going to start with a name that we mentioned in last week's episode, and that is Ekitike, the young striker from Ligue 1. Things have developed slightly. Do you want to give our listeners the latest update on the chase for the forward?
Yeah, so as we know, Newcastle have been after this player for a long time. They agreed a deal with Reims in January, and eventually it was the player that said no at the deal. He's came out since and said that, the move to Newcastle didn't really suit him at the time. He was obviously having his breakthrough season in Ligue 1 and playing very well, and he thought that a move to a relegation-threatened team in a different country probably wasn't the right fit for him at the time. What we understand now is that, Newcastle have agreed a deal with Reims yet again, slightly different to the one in January. It looks like it'll be around £25 million up front plus £5 million in add-ons. Told that those add-ons are achievable. Reims, have made no secret of the fact that they were, a bit concerned about some of the add-ons in the January deal. For example, there was going to be a big bonus if Newcastle won the Champions League, something that they felt wasn't really realistic in the next couple of years. But we're told this time around they're achievable. Reims are happy with it. It's now again just up to the player whether he wants to make the move.
It's a big move, like you say, for a young man. What do you think Newcastle have seen in him? Because it's no secret that they need a new striker to go alongside Callum Wilson. I would say even if they sign Ekitike, despite how held he is and how high he is in certain people's minds, they're still going to need another striker after him. So what have Newcastle seen in him, do you think?
Look, anybody that's watched him in France is, think that he's the next big thing. He's still only 19. Yeah, he's hitting, double figures for a team that have just finished 12th in the French top flight. So clearly there's talent there. He's a wide player coming off the left. He's currently away with France's under-20 team. Some people have compared him, as the next Mbappe. How true that is, obviously, we don't know. I'm sure that there's about 10 players in France that get that sort of label whenever they had half a good season. But look, he's clearly a talented player. It's not just Newcastle that are after him. Dortmund have obviously bookmarked him as a potential Haaland replacement. PSG, like a lot of, French youngsters are sniff around as well. So that seems to be the only real stumbling block, I think, in this is whether he wants to take the plunge and come to this side where, he might not even be first choice, really.
Well, that was going to be my next question. How do you think the club are selling this to him? Because he will not want his next move to be a bit part, will it? He'll want his next move to be the one that propels him into this superstar everyone thinks he can be. So what do you think the sales pitch will be like?
Look, I think the sales pitch has probably come to us, and you can have, years and years at this football club at the ground level. We could potentially go on and do brilliant things, and you could be, one of the main figures in that. But again, more realistically, is he's coming in from France if he signs for us. Having only really had one season in the top flight of any league, it's a different culture. He's going to be battling Alan St-Maximin for that spot in the first 11. So I think, look, the sales pitch will be, we'll give you game time. But as we've said, with other big clubs sniffing around, it's going to be sort of up to his preference as to whether we see him here.
He's there battling for the spot with Alan St-Maximin. Do you want to just give a bit of an insight into where you think he would actually play if he did indeed sign for Newcastle?
Yeah, I think, look, what you've seen for Reims and what you see for, France youth setup is that he's very much a player who's a winger, not a centre forward. Brilliant at sort of cutting in from the left-hand side, brilliant at taking players on and get to the byline down that left. There's no doubt that he could also probably play down the right. He's young enough to have that, improvement in his game. But if he's walking in
I'm just going to interrupt you there because as luck would have it, we are live on Facebook. And let me just check that this tweet is from the official club account because we know some people do like to change their Twitter handles, but it is Dan Ashworth has commenced his role as Newcastle United's sporting director after the club received formal approval from the Premier League. I'm just going to open the statement and go into it. So Dan Ashworth, obviously, he resigned from his role at Brighton in February. There was fears that it could take until at least November to get him in, but it announced earlier, last month, wasn't it, that he was appointed sporting director, and he is now been officially approved by the Premier League. I'm just going to read the statements out. Newcastle is an incredible football club. I'm delighted to be joining at this very exciting time. Each time I've been to St James's Park in the past, I've been reminded of the club's long history and the unrivaled passion of its fan base. It is a huge football club with great potential. I'm incredibly positive about what we can collectively achieve. I'm excited to start work immediately and look forward to being part of a team that is helping the club to grow and achieve long-term success. We knew it was going to happen. Premier League have approved it. We said last week, it's a big appointment, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a huge appointment. And as we touched on last week in the pod, anybody that's spoken about Dan Ashworth in the past, anybody that's worked with him, whether it was at England, West Brom, Brighton, the cricket sort of side of his job, everybody's had glowing reviews for him. Massively important to get, the deal done as quickly as they have and before the transfer window officially opens. So, yeah, fantastic deal.
Lots of people in the comments very, very excited. A lot of people in the comments also want Newcastle to, as Jonathan says there, hurry up and buy some players. We don't really think that Dan Ashworth will have that much of an impact on the summer transfer business, because we think that the club have already had a bit of a plan together. You've had Steve Nixon there. Eddie Howe's also obviously put his input in. So do you think it'll be a case he'll come in, he might add his experience into the pot, but he won't necessarily be coming in to rip the rule book, as it were, or the plan for this summer?
Yeah, I think, as we said last week, I think Newcastle have had these targets locked in for a while, especially if you look at the likes of Ekitike and Bachmann. Most of the legwork was probably done in January. Now it's just a case of, going sort of overall ground with the agents that they're already well versed with. Lots have been made of Ashworth's role as soon as he comes in, and I think it's going to be more getting those players out. We've seen reports this morning that Newcastle, haven't had any offers for their, sort of their current squad, which is a bit of a worry when you think that they probably need to do shift about 6 or 7. So I think Ashworth coming in, he won't probably have a say on who comes in, but he will have a big say on who goes out, especially the loan deals for the youngsters.
Yeah, there's an episode on our podcast channel introducing Dan Ashworth, where I spoke to the Brighton reporter for Sussex Live, provided a fantastic insight into what Ashworth did at Brighton. And a big emphasis was on youth, big emphasis was on finding loan deals for young players like Sanchez, the goalkeeper, who Newcastle have been linked to. He's now in the Spain squad. He's had an amazing turnaround in his career that was partly down to Dan Ashworth. In the comments there, we've got Jason saying Ashworth's a miracle worker, finding talent. Lamptey was 1 million. Let's believe he might have actually been less than 1 million, and he has had quite the start to his Brighton career. Roger Cook there, Aaron asks, do you think he'll assist in helping? Do you think he'll assist in helping players leave?
Yeah, I think he will. I think when you look at what his role was at Brighton, he had 6 key roles: the men's team, the women's team, the academy, and then sort of 3 off the pitch. And one of them, and one of his big sort of pushes, was making sure that loan players, that were coming from the academy, made sure they got the right roles, made sure that the moves that they were making were right for them progression, right for their career. So I think he'll have a big say, and he'll probably work alongside Shola in making sure that these youngsters that are going out on loan or they're picking the right club for them.
Nicola on YouTube says if he can sell Hendrick to another club, he can do anything. It was slightly harsh on Jeff Hendrick, but he looks like he will be out this summer. We'll continue now. We'll get back rather to some of the links that have come over the last week. And that was just the curse in many ways of a live broadcast that something would break. Morata linked to Newcastle United. We said there that even if they sign Ekitike, they would need to bring in another striker. Played for Chelsea, scored 16 and 47. Didn't have the best times in the Premier League. Hasn't really done it at Athletic or Juventus, is where he spent the last season out on loan. Would he really be the right man for Newcastle United?
I think it would be a big gamble. Look, I mean, I think a year ago you would have snapped your hand off for Morata, but I think there's probably better targets out there. As you say, he came to Chelsea. He didn't have the best of spells at Chelsea. He lost his confidence pretty quickly, struggled with injuries, lost his place in the World Cup squad as a result of that form. So look, I think maybe this might be a case of, players being linked because, their agents are doing a bit of work, or, just because Newcastle have got the money. But I wouldn't be surprised to see that Morata link, very quickly squashed.
Yeah, it is a bizarre one, but I guess it shows you the level where Newcastle United are now aiming. They want, or we think they'll be aiming for these top players with a certain pedigree. Won't be just one or two. They'll be aiming to bring in quite a few players to build that squad up and make sure that the top 10 is an achievable, aim.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, he's a 60 million, or he signed for Chelsea for 60 million. He's played 54 games for Spain. He's spent the last couple of years being bounced between Real Madrid, Juventus, Atletico, and Chelsea. He's clearly not a bad player, but I think this Italian publication that's linked Newcastle with him this morning also said that Bayern Munich, Arsenal, and Barcelona were the three other clubs interested. So this just goes to show the level of the type of players that these new owners are going to try and attract. But it also, on the other end of the stick, sort of shows how hard it's going to be for Newcastle United to compete with these big clubs to try and get these massive players away from them.
Lots of excitement in the comments. Sean Weir says, just can't wait for next season, who we buy and sell, obviously, as well as seeing the lads play. Lisa says there, we definitely need a striker of quality. We need more than just Callum Wilson. That's 100% correct. That's why we've been talking about Morata there. Ekitike can bring goals. We are going to talk about the future of Elliot Anderson. I mean, he's had a tremendous start of 2022 on loan at Bristol Rovers. Scored the goal that eventually took them up to League One. Finding goals for fun in that league. He appears to be such a talent. Is this summer the summer that he steps up, do you think? Or do you think there will be another loan deal in the offing and his time will come in the future?
I think personally it'll be another loan deal. I think a lot of fans, if Elliot was to be kept on in and around the squad this season, I think a lot of fans would support that decision. Eddie Howe's obviously came out and said that he's going to give him a pre-season to sort of show what he's worth. Can he mix it with the big squad? We've got to remember, look, he's torn up League Two, but it's that standard of, he's 4 divisions below the Premier League. So I think if I was Howe, and look, I'm not trying to tell him how to do his job or anything like that, or if I was Dan Ashworth, I would probably be looking for a championship loan. Maybe like some Middlesbrough club like that, where, you're really going to get tested at a good level. If he cuts the mustard, then I think, the season going on after that, we've got a huge player on our hands. But I think, recency bias, we're all, itching to see him because of how well he's done at League Two. But, you've got to remember that level and that standard.
It's also important, I think, as well, is that he doesn't just come back and train week in, week out and then sit on the bench or go back into the under-23s. It's really important now that development continues, isn't it? Because if you then just, in many ways, stagnate by going back into the under-23s, that's no disrespect to the setup or the players currently in that age level. But I think Anderson is at the point where he needs regular game time. And if it's not going to be in the Premier League with Newcastle United, it has to be at a championship level or a League One level.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, look, this is where Dan Ashworth's going to help. He's going to come in and look at the type of players Newcastle have got in their academy or the young players coming through, and he's going to help find them that best club. Whereas in previous years, how many times have we seen the likes of, Adam Armstrong or players like that who looked like they had a huge future? They inevitably ended up staying at Newcastle and they just sort of warmed the bench under the likes of Pardew and other managers. So, yeah, look, crucially gets the right move, and I wouldn't be surprised if he has, a month or two with the first team over the summer before they find him alone in sort of August time.
Goes away maybe with pre-season, perhaps with a group that go over to Portugal to play the game over then. Obviously, 2 European teams coming in July as well at St James's Park. So that experience will be key. Will certainly be interesting to see what the future holds for Elliot Anderson. One of the commenters in the comments there, Mike Joyce, says, no way are we going to pay 50 million for Ake. And he is on our list to be discussed, and that's where we'll go next. We know Ake at Manchester City, he's not first choice. He impressed at Bournemouth enough for Manchester City to sign him when Bournemouth were relegated under Eddie Howe. We know Eddie Howe and Ake have got a good relationship. We know Newcastle are in the market for a centre-back. So it's very easy to put 2 and 2 together and get the 4, isn't it? Do you think Ake is the kind of person that Eddie Howe would target and bring to Newcastle United?
I think, look, Probably yes. I think as you've touched on there, a lot of it makes sense. He's a centre-back which Newcastle are looking for. Howe knows him very well. Everything Ake has said about Howe in the past has been very positive. He's clearly got a good relationship. He's a left-footed centre-back who can also play left-back, which is, another plus. I think the only real negative, I think, of the deal is the price tag that's being floated about, 50 million. If that was to be the deal, it would take a huge chunk of Newcastle's wages in a position where they probably aren't looking to, spend a lot of money. And look, I think it's one that'll divide fans' opinion. I've seen fans saying that no way would they pay for it. I've seen others saying it would be a great deal. So there's positives, but I think in a fee like that, it's a bit of a gamble.
It's a huge gamble. He is a very good centre back, but I guess many people would think, well, actually, if you want to achieve success, 50 million maybe isn't the biggest price tag to pay if it gets you to where you want to go. But on the other hand, we think Newcastle are going to be sensible in their approach when it comes to the transfer market, and that 50 million, when you look at what Ake has achieved, how much better is he than the likes of maybe Dan Burn or Fabian Schär or Jamal Lascelles?
If you want to go and spend 50 million on a central defender, you need to be absolutely adamant that they are going to improve your team for the better. And I think based on some of the comments we've had in this live already, fans aren't convinced that he is the man. And I don't think he is. Look, he's done very well to get that move to Manchester City, but we've seen very slowly that he couldn't really hold down a place in that team. He's prone with the odd mistake. So look, yeah, it would be a risk, as we've said.
Paul Simmons on YouTube says Ake would be a huge backward step, very overrated, and not worth £50 million at all. Quite a few people asking about Botman. He came out over the weekend, didn't he, and kind of said what he wanted, and he said he needed to have a good feeling about the project, not necessarily about the team, but he had to have a good feeling about the move overall. What did you read into those comments, and where do you think Newcastle stand at the moment for the chase in the defender?
Yeah, I think it's been obvious for weeks that it's probably between Newcastle and AC Milan. I think we were all sort of wanting him to say a bit more on Saturday when he came out and spoke to the media. Obviously, he was quite guarded and cryptic in what he said. But as we touched on in the podcast last week, he'd be a fantastic signing. Anybody that's getting him is, getting a fantastic young centre-back. It all probably is boiling down to whether he wants to come and join this project, admittedly at a mid-table club who are looking to do big things, or whether he wants to go to a club that have just won, Italy's top division and are going to be playing Champions League football. So again, this is what Newcastle are up against.
We've got another comment there from Jordan. He says Botman next to Burn would be imposing. That's in Newcastle managed to sign Botman. Do you think that would be the centre pairing going into next season?
Look, I think it's tricky to dislodge Fabian Schär if he can keep the form up of the last 6 months. But then again, we've seen that, he's sort of prone to a mistake sometimes. He sort of gets drawn into silly fouls. Then you've got Burn, who a couple of times has had, a bit of a shaky game in the last 6 months. So I think it would be very, very interesting to see, who comes in alongside Botman or who plays alongside him, because I wouldn't like to call it, to be honest.
Certainly going to be interesting. It's just nice to see Newcastle looking to sign good players, isn't it? And of course, you've got the likes of, Kel Watts performed well at Wigan, Jamal Lascelles. We don't think he'll be going anywhere. So it's not just the case of Botman arrives. There's options that Eddie Howe has got to play with then. And Jamal Lascelles had a decent finish to the season as well. So it's certainly going to be interesting going forward. Looking in the comments as well, I've got questions about Morata Diaby. So he's a winger. He can play on either side. 13 goals, 13 assists for Bayer Leverkusen last season. Will have to pay a very pretty penny if Newcastle do indeed go after him, rumoured to be around 55 million pounds. Again, some people would argue, well, that's nothing to do Newcastle United, but that's still a very hefty price. What do you reckon is going to happen there?
I think if they can pull this Diaby deal off, it would be a bigger statement than Botman, to be honest, because look at what he's done at Leverkusen this season. 13 goals, 13 assists. He's unlike a French winger in Newcastle's side. He's in the French setup, and he's sort of well earned his place there. Leverkusen absolutely desperate to keep him. Their sporting director, Simon Rolfs, came out a couple of weeks ago and said they've made it clear, that they really don't want to sell him. They're optimistic that he'll stay. They've tied down Patrick Schick, who has enjoyed such a good relationship with Diaby. So, they're setting their stall out that they're going to keep him. If Newcastle manage to prize him away for, what it's looking like, 55 million, what a statement that is, because, this is a player that is going to be talked about as, one of France's sort of, the next generation along with Mbappe. So I think it's probably going to be the hardest deal to do this summer, given Leverkusen's stance, but what a signing it would be, and a huge statement.
Where would that leave the likes of Fraser, Almiron, Murphy, even Alan St-Maximin to a degree?
I think it leaves them all in his wake. I think if he comes in, and then he's easily one of the first names on the team sheet. Look, Fraser's done very well, but I think we're talking about a complete, step up here now. We're talking about a Scotland international who's in and out the team for, a 22-year-old who is, knocking on that France door pretty heavily. So it would probably leave Miggy and Murphy, sort of struggling. Fraser would probably see his game time dramatically reduced. But as we've said many times on this podcast, this is about, the level that Newcastle United want to go to in the next couple of years. And as I said, what a statement of intent it would be going forward.
Plenty of people asking about financial fair play. I'm looking over to you, Aaron. Do you want to have a good answer to a few of them questions? It's a difficult one unless you are a mathematician and know the rules inside out, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, but I think, the club have came out and said that they're not going to spend a huge amount of money. They're going to make sure that they don't fall into the trap of an Everton or, some of these teams that, spend beyond their means. Howe was very sort of conclusive in that towards the end of the season, that he doesn't expect there to be a huge overhaul. And I think, it's so easy for us to get sucked into these rumours of, Lucas Paqueta and Diaby and Botman and Morata are all going to come instantly. That's 250 million. Expectations need to be tempered a little bit. And I honestly don't think we'll see this, Man City-esque spending spree in the first summer. I think it'll be 4 or 5 new additions, along with a lot of players shipped out if they can, to make sure that the books are balanced.
A lot of people have been asking about those players who need to be shipped out. If you're watching this live on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, why don't you pop into the comments who you think will be first, second, third out the door this summer at Newcastle United, and then we'll get back to those recommendations in a moment. Do you think that what this summer is going to require for Newcastle United is that first signing? So if Ekitike says Botman coming to Newcastle, then that might make his mind up, or vice versa. It's going to take one domino to fall and the rest will follow.
Yeah, 100%. I think we saw that in January to an extent. Everyone praised Trippier for making that leap, and snubbing other English teams and leaving quite a cushy setup at Atletico. If Ekitike joins, or let's say Botman joins first, and Ekitike is looking at it and thinking, they are building something, they are serious about what they're doing, it's only going to attract better players. And I think even the likes of having Bruno in and Trippier in is going to say to these big players that are maybe, settled at Leverkusen, settled at Atletico, settled at Lille, to make that jump and take the risk to come to England.
Some people would say, well, if the offer is on the table and you're having to wait to see who else signs, then your heart mustn't be in it. Are you the right player for Newcastle United? But when you are a young player like Ekitike or Botman, I mean, this is kind of Botman's first big move, isn't it? So this has to be the right decision. It's not just as simple as saying, well, look, here's an offer from Newcastle United. You should just go and accept it. It's very easy for us to sit here and people in the comments saying that, because for most of us, that's probably our boyhood dream. But for these guys, it's not as simple as that.
For the likes of Sven Botman, right? He's 22. He's having his big first move. There's a World Cup in November, and he's got to try and beat the likes of Van Dijk and De Ligt to a starting place. Does he think, well, I'm going to go to Newcastle and I'm going to be playing every week, but it's going to be a team in mid-table? Or do I think, look, I go to AC Milan, I'm playing every week, and we're in the Champions League, and I'm in the public eye, and I'm sort of knocking on that door. And it's going to be the same for other players. Ekitike, yes, he's a bit younger. He's not in the French first squad yet, but Diaby is. And again, we've got to remember that every time there's a World Cup, 6 months before, players are thinking about their future and, what's going to suit them best for making sure that they're on the plane.
I asked you guys to put into the comments who you think will leave Newcastle United. We've got a lot of people saying Dwight Gale. We've got Jezeb saying Clark, Fernandez, Hayden, and Darlow could be the first round of players to go. A lot of those have been the foundation out there for many years, Aaron. Some great servants there listed here in the comments. it'll be a shame to see them go. But I guess that's when Newcastle United are now. And those players who do leave this summer can go with their head held high, that they were part of this first group that kept Newcastle in the Premier League and led them to this point where it is a big turnaround. It is a big clear out, but it's for all the right reasons.
Yeah, I don't think any of them will leave in sort of under a bad cloud. Even the likes of Kieran Clark, who's probably fallen out of favour and maybe lost a bit of that, reputation among Newcastle fans. You got to remember he came in for 5 million, helped the club get back up, and has played sort of a squad player role in the next 3 seasons. So even players like that, I think Jeff Hendrick to an extent, even though fans want to see him gone, I think he's came on a free in a team that was struggling, and for a time he was in and around the first team. So I think there'll be a lot of players going that are have that sentimental sort of value. But as we've touched on previously, this is just the levels that Newcastle want to get to now.
Now, a couple of people mentioned there Jamal Lewis. We're going to talk about Aaron Hickey, who is the Bologna fullback and played left back or right back. Of course, Matt Targett did really well at Newcastle. It doesn't look like he's going to arrive, or at least not anytime soon. We have got Jonathan there saying, well, Jamal Lewis might stay. And I guess if you're Eddie Howe, are you looking at Jamal Lewis and think, well, he's just had an unfortunate time. The last manager didn't quite fancy him. He then picked up quite a bad injury. He's clearly got talent. I mean, Liverpool wanted him. They don't just go after anyone. They rarely make any mistakes in the transfer market. So he's clearly got something about him. Do you look at him and think, well, actually, why can't he be a number one left back?
Yeah, I mean, look, will he be the number one left back going forward? I don't know, but I think Eddie Howe's certainly willing to give him a try. Anytime Eddie Howe was asked about him in the last 6 months, when he wasn't in the 25-man squad, he's very positive about him. And I think he'll be another one that gets a pre-season to show whether or not he's overcame this injury. Keeping him in the squad obviously means that, there isn't that sort of need to go out and sign a massive left back. They probably will obviously strengthen, whether that'll be Target or Lodi or another target we're yet to see. But I think they'll give him a chance. And as you say, Liverpool wanted him. He's fantastic at Norwich. Newcastle thought they had a real steal on their hands when they signed him from Norwich. It's just been unfortunate that either he hasn't been given the game time or he struggled with injuries.
But then I guess if you're Jamal Lewis and you're looking at the likes of Joe Linton or Emil Kraft, and you're thinking, with Fabian Schär, you think, well, this manager has actually managed to turn them around from potential flops where a large portion of Newcastle fans were getting on the back, certainly of Joe Linton and Kraft, and some of it was totally acceptable in terms of, saying, well, they haven't lived up the price tag, they're maybe not performing as well as we expected. But now you look at them, I mean, for me, Emil Kraft stays this summer. He backs up Kieran Trippier. Joe Linton, as we've mentioned on previous episodes, for me is probably second or third on that starting 11 team list. That's got to give you hope with your Jamal Lewis, surely.
Yeah, it's got to give you hope that Howe is, this miracle worker that can turn you around. But I think on the flip side, Lewis isn't just leaving let's just say the takeover hadn't happened and Lewis was being linked with an exit. He's probably thinking, look, I'm going to leave this mid-table team and I'm going to go to another mid-table team and I can show what I can do. Now, he's got the incentive of saying, I'm going to graft for my players and show that I can be a part of this team who are the richest club in the world, have ambitions to reach Europe. If he can make it work and find that form that he showed at Norwich, then, he's definitely going to stay. So good luck to him, but I definitely think Howe will give him a chance from what he's been saying in the last couple of months.
Got a huge list here from Victor, who says he'd like to see Wood, Clark, Fernandez, Menkeo. I'm assuming that is Matty Longstaff, Isaac Hayden, Hendrick, Murphy, Gale, Darlow, Lewis, Almiron, and Lascelles, and Shelby all head out this summer. I don't think actually looking at them names, maybe half, would you say?
I think that's optimistic. I think all of them go. I think let's go through them. I think Chris Wood stays. Kieran Clark will go. Fernandez go. Menkeo.
I'm not too sure. I like Menkeo, but I think Kraft's ahead of him now, and I think they might look to move him on. Matty Longstaff, I would love it to work out for Matty Longstaff, but with his brother now signing a new deal, they understand that Newcastle are probably going to go after another central midfielder, and then the options ahead of him. Has his time passed in Newcastle, do you think?
I can see him getting a loan this summer.
Giving
him another spell out. Hayden looks like he's going to go from his sort of social media post. Hendrick has said out the weekend that he's probably played his last game.
I think Murphy will stay.
Murphy stays.
Decent squad player.
Gale goes. I think Darlow goes. Lewis stays. Almiron stays. Lascelles is a tricky
We've
one,
got
isn't
it down on the list, haven't we? Because he's been linked with a return to Nottingham Forest. And it's interesting because when you speak to Lascelles, it's really the first time he's found himself out of the team. And he said, look, I just get on with it. It's important that the team's winning. He hasn't kicked up a fuss. He's leading off the pitch, even though he's not getting on the pitch, which is a sign of a really good captain. But, I mean, the chance to go back to Forest, to be in there, maybe they're starting 11, leading them back into the Premier League, that would be a big draw, wouldn't it?
I feel like it's like the perfect deal for both parties. If you're Jamal Lascelles, yes, look, you leave Newcastle, which is obviously going to be a shame, but you're getting Premier League football at a club that you've got a massive history with. You love there. You could be a starting player in, Forest's first Premier League season in 20 years. It's a good deal for Newcastle because it gets him off the books. And obviously, it looks like he's going to be down the pecking order anyway. Yes, they would lose a dressing room leader, but I think on the pitch, his time's probably been and gone at Newcastle. I think his probably best days are behind him. So I think for me, it's a deal that looks like it could work for both parties.
I think it'd be very interesting. Depends how much he wants to play first team football.
Yeah.
That's what it comes. That's what a lot of that comes down to as well. Do you want to go along on the journey in Newcastle United and be part of whatever's to come, or do you want to go out and play first team football where you've got a bit more of a chance of actually holding down a place? And Shelvey was the last one on that list. Always someone that just divides opinion. For me,
I think he stays.
I think he does stay, but I'm not sure first team.
If you think, Joelinton, Bruno,
and then
Willock, Longstaff, Shelvey, and then potentially one more. Does someone come in for an offer of them though? Does the likes of Forest or Fulham come in and say we'll give you 10 million for him?
Be interesting.
Be interesting to see what the club would do in that situation.
He did step up, but whereas I think previously when maybe under Steve Bruce when he missed out through injury, even if he hadn't been playing well in the previous games leading up to that injury, I always felt there was a noticeable loss when he wasn't in the team.
Yeah.
Whereas towards the end of last season, and it helps Newcastle on a great run of form, I didn't really feel it. You didn't really look around and go, oh, John Joe Shelvey's not playing. I think that is key. To get another midfielder in, you go, okay, he's not going to get ahead of Bruno. Joelinton will most likely start those first few games, and if he continues in the way he finished, then he's not going to get kicked out. And then you look at potentially a new arrival or Sean Longstaff, who finished the season really strongly. It's a positive dilemma, but it's a very interesting one, isn't it?
It's a good headache to have. What I would say on Shelvey is that it's been a couple of times in the last couple of years where it looks like he's down and out and his time's come to an end, and he always just seems to pull it out the bag when it most matters. So I don't think he'll be under any pressure this summer. I think when you look at the type of players that the club are probably going to offload, I don't particularly think Shelvey would be one of them, especially not one of the first names on the list anyway. It depends who comes in, I suppose.
And someone has said they would get rid of Alan St. Maximin. I think it was Jay. Sorry, the comments just popped off the screen there. But Alan St. Maximin, again, he's another one that splits opinion, and he wasn't in the list that we read out originally there. I think he'll stay unless there's a massive bid coming in. But as we've said on previous episodes, it's a big season for him, isn't it?
Big season, yeah. We have touched on previous podcasts that it's sort of make or break because he's got all this potential, and people are saying, yes, he looks good in a bad team. He's got to show that he can raise his level as better players come in. Look, there's all this talk about Tottenham, who have just signed Ivan Perisic. Conte, who loves playing with wing backs rather than attacking midfielders on the wing. So is it a move that fits for that type of money? I don't think so. So I think if you ask me, I think he'd be staying.
And just briefly on another player linked to Newcastle, Aaron Hickey, Bologna, 19-year-old, can play both right back, left back. Look, he's done very well over in Serie A. He is clearly a man with a lot of talent, but at 19, can you really see him coming in to be the man who takes what was Matty Targett's spot towards the end of last season?
He's still very raw. Look, he's had a good season with Bologna and very highly thought of. He's another one that's linked with Arsenal. It feels like all of our players that we want, Arsenal want them too, which I suppose is a positive and shows where the club are going, but still very raw. Could you imagine a 19-year-old coming in and taking that spot from the off? I'm not so sure.
But there is this argument always kind of gets to me. It's like, he's only like 19. And then you look around, Elliot Anderson's only, 19? And it was said when Matty Longstaff first broke through. But it didn't stop Wayne Rooney. You know what I mean? And I know Wayne Rooney is a very, very big example, isn't he? He's an outlier because he had such talent. But, if you're good enough, then surely it doesn't matter if you're 16, 17 or 25, you're good enough to play. And I think that's the only way you can start to develop is by, chuck them in and see what happens.
Yeah, and look, Aaron Hickey, from what everyone says, is a fantastic player. He's very highly thought of within the sort of Scotland ranks. There was a bit of surprise when he left for Bologna because there was some big names chasing him when he left Scotland. So I don't have any doubt that he would be a fantastic signing. It's just whether is he good enough to take that step up and play week in, week out at a Premier League club at left back? When you've got the likes of Lodi or Matty Targett being linked, time will tell, I suppose.
Be a good opportunity just to remind you guys to subscribe to the podcast on your podcast provider and leave us a rating and review as well. It's much appreciated. Aaron, just talk us through your 3 priorities for the summer in terms of signings and the positions.
I think they need a striker, and I don't mean Ekitike. I think if Ekitike comes in, fantastic, but I think he's probably more as a winger and not a number 9. I think for as good as Callum Wilson was last season, and I would love Callum Wilson to have a run of games and be as good as he was in the last couple, I just think there's too many doubts about his fitness, so I think a striker's needed. I would love to see a Botman, and if not Botman, another quality young centre-back who raises that level, maybe above Shaw and Byrne come in. And then third, I think you probably are looking at a left-back. I think if we go into this season with just Dummett and Lewis, then you may be thinking it's an area to progress. So I think Targett or Lodi would be another one, really.
And you're going to have a story up on our website, chroniclelive.co.uk, later today. And if you're listening to this after 5 o'clock on the 6th of June, it'll already be up there. So do head over and give it a read. But it's all about how the change of approach at Newcastle is starting to kick off, so to speak. And that's in terms of signing players a lot quicker in the window than Mike Ashley's Newcastle United did previously. Just how important do you think that is for Newcastle's preparation going into the new season to get these players in as soon as possible?
Yeah, huge. And look, this is what Eddie Howe's wanted to do, not just with transfers, but with everything, with the training ground changes, with the pre-season tour, with everything. He wants it done soon so that they've got as much time to prepare for the new season. The piece that I'm going to write is obviously, how we went years and years, 14 years under Mike Ashley, and there was always sort of we were getting to deadline day. I remember last August, are we going to sign Hamza Chowdhury and stuff like that? I think the business will be done well before that. You look at the likes of Ekitike and Botman. If they do decide to come, I think they'll be wrapped up early. You do forget that the transfer window isn't even open yet. We obviously are talking about transfers, but it's still another 4 days till it opens. So, but yeah, I think the business will be done, well before time, which is refreshing after how many years under Ashley we sort of left it late.
Most certainly, plenty to look forward to. It's going to be an exciting summer, and we will be with you along on the journey every step of the way. This has been the Everything is Black and White podcast. Thank you very much for watching. If you're listening later on the podcast, thank you very much for tuning in. Do head over to chroniclelive.co.uk. There is in the comments there a survey on Dan Ashworth's priorities. Give that a fill out, and I'll also pop into the podcast notes and into the comments here the podcast episode on Dan Ashworth. Give that a listen, because if you're not already excited about Dan Ashworth's arrival, once you listen to that, I guarantee you most certainly will be. Thank you very much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your week.